This episode was recorded at 8:06. Hey everybody, welcome to the Oak Grove podcast. My name is CJ.
And I'm Hanna.
And this is our Oak Grove Lenten podcast brought to you by the youth. We both work in the youth department, and each week we're going to be having a conversation with different youth about where they're finding hope in the world. Hanna, first, why don't we just share who we are and how we got here?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Hanna Cain. I'm the youth ministry assistant here at Oak Grove. And yeah, I've been in church life for a long time. I grew up in Chambly, so right up the road, and went to St. James UMC as a kid. And in my own youth ministry experience, I felt a call to ministry when I was 15 on a middle school retreat that I was a high school leader on, and kind of the rest is history from there. I continued to do everything I could in my own youth group, and then went off to college to study religion. And I graduated in spring of 2023 from the University of Georgia. And then I moved back, and I'm here. I'm a second-year seminarian at Candler School of Theology, getting my Master's of Divinity. And let's see, I started working here a year ago, and I love it a lot. CJ called me and was like, hey, you want to apply for this job? Because we had worked together. I was an intern for a summer during college and worked with CJ at his previous church. So it was a lot of fun. And now we're here together. What about you, CJ?
That's awesome. And it's been an incredible year. Hanna, I am not just saying this for all the listeners, but I do thoroughly enjoy working with you. So thanks. I'm glad you're here, and we've had a lot of fun together.
Absolutely.
My name is CJ, and I am also a Georgia native, born and raised in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Went to Decula United Methodist Church for most of my childhood, time growing up, at least in youth group anyway. Very similar. Felt a call to ministry when I was younger. Definitely did not expect it to be youth ministry for this long, but here I am, and I can't get away from it. And I've loved every minute of it. Went to LaGrange College for undergrad, go Panthers. And while there, got a job at LaGrange First United Methodist working with the youth ministry. And then when I came up to Atlanta for seminary, started working at St. James. That's where Hanna and I worked together. And then after graduating seminary, I was looking for full-time work, and the stars aligned, God willed, and here I am. So it's been a really, really incredible journey, and thoroughly enjoy working with youth and young people and just advocating for youth on behalf of the whole church. So this is our Lenten podcast. Let's make sure all of our listeners know what Lent is.
Yeah.
So you want to chime in?
Yeah, Lent is a time in the church calendar that starts with Ash Wednesday, and it's a 40-day period of preparation up until Easter. And so it reflects the time that Jesus was in the wilderness, and it's usually a time of self-reflection and thinking about what's to come in the resurrection. And
I've been using the word recalibration a lot, right?
Yes.
Trying to, like when the GPS is saying recalculating, trying to get you back on the road that God has laid out for you.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes with our theme for Lent at Oak Grove, which is looking at our spiritual paths, our spiritual journeys. And these paths and journeys are not always easy.
No.
There's a lot of speed bumps that we hit.
Yeah.
And something has to invite us to take that next step at times.
I think often we do that by, doing the typical Lenten practices of fasting and some penance and those sorts of things. But this year, I think we're trying to invite the idea of what can we look at and what can we gain in this season through reflection and a practice of listening to young voices by listening to the wisdom of our youth, and specifically seeing what they're doing in their own lives and in this church and in the world. So it's been really, really cool thing for us to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely. And so ultimately, at least for me, what it is that keeps me moving one foot in front of the other on this spiritual journey is hope. Hope that the next step is going to be better. Hope that what God is doing in the world is real and is affecting change, and that tomorrow can be a better day than today. Back to the idea of Lent. I had a pastor one time, actually you did too, and he always thought it was really funny, Ash Wednesday at least, because he would talk about how serious we get about Lent, and everybody wants to know, what are you giving up and how hard is it going to be? And we would almost rank ourselves by how hard our spiritual discipline is and take it so seriously. And on the very first day of Lent, we literally say, hey, you're dust and you're going to go back to dust.
Yep.
So maybe take it a little bit more loosely, carry it a little bit more lightly. And it was Max Vincent, if you know him. He's an incredible pastor here in the North Georgia Conference. And that's always stuck with me. Maybe we take ourselves a little bit too seriously when it comes to some things, at least.
Yeah. So. And I think the youth are a wonderful example of that. Some of them just are so nonchalant in serious times, and you're like, I admire your perspective.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even with big things, we have a lot of kids going into college right now, and there is a lot of unknown, and they're waking up every day and hoping for an acceptance letter to come, or knowing that it's going to come soon, and just got to get through the next few months. And so I look to them, and I look to them wanting to embrace what is senior year, and finding hope within the mundane and within their friends as they kind of journey on towards this time of unknowing for them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I think beautiful youth ministry looks like creating a space that students can be their true selves and carry that nonchalant attitude. I've told you the story of the fairies of Marmagoth.
Oh, yes. Please tell the viewers.
I can't remember if it's been on the Oak Grove podcast before or not. So sorry if you've heard this before, listeners. But there's this time I was at St. James.
I was with you.
Yes.
I was here this summer. That's why I know. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah, we had gone on a trip to Camp Glisten. Shout out to the North Georgia Conference Camp and Retreat Ministries. And at Camp Glisten, they find this rock. It's nothing special about this rock. Like, they were able to pick up the rock, and these 6 or 7 students, 1 guy and 6 girls, they decided that this was the rock of Marmagoth, and it had this magical powers that allowed them to be fairies of Marmagoth. And they all had different fairy powers, and these are middle schoolers. And if you don't know, middle school is when people really, really start caring about what the other thinks of them, and like putting up a lot of walls and trying to
protect their image.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so fairies of Marmagoth, they come home from the retreat. They took that rock with them from Camp Glisten, ended up spray painting it, putting glitter all over it, and every single week for like a whole semester at youth group, they would bring this rock with them in a bag. And they referred to themselves as the fairies of Marmagoth week in and week out. And they probably would not have done that at school. They wouldn't have been done that in front of some of their other friends. But here at youth group, we had created something so special that they could be themselves and so nonchalant and bask in having fun and being a teenager.
Yeah.
When life can be really, really hard. I think beautiful youth ministry creates an environment that encourages people to be themselves, not take themselves too seriously, and remember that God loves them as they are.
And I think that, that it's true for the youth, but it's also true for anyone who's with them. You know, CJ and I work long days on Sunday, and we often say at the end, like, we're tired, but we feel renewed. And it's because the hope that these kids exude in just themselves is so life-giving.
Well, and tell them about the game that we played on Sunday night, and we set the example for Hanna.
I don't know what you're talking about.
pantyhose? The pantyhose?
If you come and find me in church, I will share with you a wonderful video. CJ and I, we usually do like a fun large group game before our typical message and going into the worship part of youth fellowship. And so this past Sunday, we we put pantyhose on top of our head with a tennis ball at the end of it. And we chose to be an example for the kids before they did it. And so CJ and I are in the middle of youth hall, throwing our heads back and forth as much as possible, the goal of the game is to like wrap your tennis ball around the other person's
pantyhose and tennis ball, yeah.
and pull it off of their head. So CJ and I actually never completed the task because we were going for a while. But
so there's just
and it was fun. So
there's just a helicopter video of Hanna and CJ with a tennis ball and pantyhose, and it's not going to go online. It's going to remain offline for eternity, hopefully. So not taking yourself so seriously, but also finding value in some of the spiritual practices, right? Because throughout this podcast, we're looking at ways that our youth are engaging in real service of the community, of our church here at Oak Grove, of the world, that are really important to our students. And some of those things are local missions, serving at Trinity, packing hygiene kits, those types of things. Serving on our audiovisual team, serving in worship through music, advocating for being a more inclusive church, caring about creation and the earth and sustainability, and then also international missions. We're going to Costa Rica here over spring break, not too long. So now, Hanna, why did we choose to do this podcast?
We chose hope because I think we're living in a time right now that feels kind of cynical, and especially in a time of Lent when we're encouraged to focus on penance and be self-reflective and kind of engage in solitude. All of those things are great. And also, I think right now in our world, looking at other people and being in community and connection with one another and seeing where the hope is can also be just as life-giving. And so my challenge for myself in this Lenten season is to not only give something up for myself in the weeks, but to also engage in a new practice, a new spiritual practice, or just being in connection with someone every day and seeing where I find God's hope within them.
I love that. And where are you finding hope just in general in the world right now?
Oh, I mean, I'm finding hope in community. I need people. That's how I get through. And I think that's not a isolated feeling. I think a lot of people need people. Yeah, I lean on different communities. I have a community at Candler that I lean on and in classes and thinking about heady theological things. And I have my people at Oak Grove on staff, and then I also have the youth. And all of my communities are important and help me to find joy and find life in every day. What about you, CJ?
Absolutely. That is really good. And in a similar boat, I am convinced that youth are going to save the world, save the church. Last year at annual conference, one thing that the annual conference does every single year is a service for licensing, commissioning, and ordination.
And if you don't know, annual conference is the yearly gathering of all Methodists in North Georgia. It's a mixture of clergy and laity, and you can go as a delegate or you can go as a visitor and learn about the things going on in the life of the church and changes that are being made and the direction that we're headed.
And during one of the last hymns or last songs, they do an altar call, but it's not really an altar call. It's is God inviting you to ministry? Or is God calling you to ordained ministry? And last year, it felt like the teenagers in that room, and there is probably 40 or 50 teenagers that attend annual conference every year, were sprinting to the stage, like couldn't get there fast enough. And it was beautiful. And I still remember that feeling, all the sights, and to know that we have multiple youth at Oak Grove that were among that group was even more special. And also that we are able to bring it back here to Oak Grove, and knowing that we're working on a culture of call. Hannah and I, not too long ago, had a meeting with our student leadership team where we planned out an entire retreat with student leaders, and they're going to be the ones giving the messages and waking up early to cook dinner to serve the younger students in the youth group. And it's just beautiful to see young people wanting to be in ministry. And that just gives me so much hope.
Yeah.
That I don't want anything to be standing in their way, right? Like I want to break down any and every wall, obstacle, hardship that they might come into. And it's a really special job.
Yeah. And I think going back to annual conference specifically, they have hope while also being in the messiness of it. Annual conference is church. You see all sides of church in those conferences. And we had a youth of our own who stood up and asked a question and asked how he could become a conference lay leader.
Yeah.
And this was after him being he was a delegate, and will be again. And he sees the messiness of church. He understands how it all functions. And he also sees the beauty of church and wants to be a part of that for as long as he can in leadership positions. And I find hope in the youth's willingness to engage with the messy and the hard to still push forward and like continue those steps.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And their gifts are abundant and so diverse too. That one youth that you're talking about, I want to say Beth LaRocca Pitts, our senior pastor, nominated him for the Standing Rules Committee.
I love that.
That's like, if you like Robert's Rules of Orders and, you know, who's allowed to talk when and who has to talk before we can do this or that, like all those nitty gritty rules of how the meeting's supposed to go, which is completely his jam. But I think to a lot of people, they're like, not me.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that he gets to be on that and, use his knowledge and gifts and wisdom in those meetings too. It's just beautiful. There's hope abounds with the youth. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to this journey with you, our listeners, with Hannah and all the students that are going to be a part of it. And I think we have some things coming up at the church here very soon. Hannah, what do you got?
Yes. Tonight we have the Waffle Off. It's a fundraiser for our music missions. It's a wonderful opportunity to experience hope here at the church. We will have lots of youth who will make you smile, likely. And it's a time to come and eat waffles. So it should be a good time. What else do we have going on, CJ?
Well, we hope that we will see you at the Waffle Off, and we hope that we will see you tomorrow night at 6:15 in the sanctuary for our Ash Wednesday service. We'll also have drive-through ashes in the morning on your way to work, on your way to taking your kids to school. And then finally, along with this podcast, which comes out every single Tuesday, you can pick up a physical copy of our Lenten devotional or follow along with us online. Our social media team will be uploading the devotional regularly to Instagram and Facebook. And you can find this podcast on Spotify or the video version on YouTube.
There's also an audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform.
And I hope you'll join us next week here at the Oak Grove Podcast as Hannah Cain will be interviewing one of our students, Reese Vaughn, and the impact that local missions has had in his own life and his own sense of finding hope in the world.
We're looking forward to it. See y'all next week. Peace, y'all.
Take it easy.